Good morning to everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank the MODERNA Foundation for counting on our experience related to global talent. I'm a bit worried because I have to talk this morning in a group of experts, scientists, etc. And I have got to tell you about how we have advanced in globalization. My 20-minute talk is going to be divided up as follows. First of all, I'm going to consider whether we need global talent, and then what we're going to base the results on our history. It's a little bit like the poem that Dr. Echenique had showed us earlier. It will be set out very well typed. We have done a lot of crossing out over the last few years, and we're going to be able to present the results. Do we need global talent? Well, it's a global market. So what comes to mind when we're thinking about a global market, new possibilities, new consumers? But there is something else that we must take into account. There's global talent as well at the disposal of more companies that all come into play. So I am just going to focus on my possibilities of recruiting talent. But there are businesses, companies that say, I'm doing very well in my local business, so why am I going to go on to the global market if I've got my customers? And there will be others that will be able to do business or take that step to be more competitive, to be more global, to be more efficient, cost-efficient or effective. And we have to see how we can compete with those companies to be able, if you're going to continue to work on a global market, on a local market, or continue to work on a global market. The market changes very quickly nowadays, so what could be a stable business for 30 years can change completely and disappear even. Being able to diversify in businesses doing different things is a key aspect for the sustainability of companies. And this is one of the bases that we have used. And this is one of the most important decisions that were taken in our company. We were doing very well in Spain, so it was to decide on whether to take risks and go global was an important decision. This is a center that Dr. Echenique measured in San Sebastián, which was organized very differently to what occurs in other organizations, because they become cells. There's no hierarchy, and everybody has a common goal. They are individual, but they have to collaborate at the same time. Society is more collaborative. There's more networking nowadays. It is impossible today to have all the talent. What we have to have is access to the talent in a determined specific environment, and that is essential in the new business models. So I could conclude by saying that not just the intelligent people survive. Those who survive are the ones that adapt better to the environment. And the business environment is this that we can see today. Those who work with suppliers, partners all over the world. And they will be the ones whose survival is guaranteed. I'm going to talk to you about our case. Those of you who aren't familiar with our company, I will sum it up. We started off about 17 years ago. There were 5 of us in Spain. And 2 years later, we decided, even though things were doing very well in 1998 in Spain, we decided to go global. So in short, in 15 years, we have opened up in 12 countries. And we've never gone to the country and bought a company. What we've done is with talent. These people have set up their offices, set up their companies in the different countries. There is, first of all, we realized that there was a market outside Spain that we could take advantage of. Here we can see Temuco, Tucumán, which a lot of people probably haven't even heard of. And this enabled us to use talent and work with Spanish customers and become much more effective, much more efficient and competitive. In green, there you can see places where there are no offices, but we have people there for the Latin American market. So that globalization the idea was to explore markets, but now it has enabled us to be more sustainable as a company, and it enables us to have talent, recruit talent in the different places. It's much more difficult nowadays to have computer experts, engineers, and it is this way we can do it in a much more competitive manner. Barriers. The most important or difficult barriers to overcome. Culture, firstly. The most critical one, at least in the case of Spain, is the language. This is something that's always been a problem in Spain, finding somebody who can speak other languages. That is one of the main problems that exists. The organization as well of the company, that is also a barrier which is difficult to overcome. The globalization process becomes difficult because of the organization, because of the hierarchy, it's difficult to take decisions, and therefore the organization becomes a barrier to reach other markets. You have to have people who are able to take the right decisions at certain moments in time. And then we must have access to local resources. You go to a country that you are not familiar with, and that is a barrier in itself. So you have to have local resources. You have to understand as well the local market. You must know how business is done in the different countries and adapt accordingly. These are the important aspects or barriers for globalization. So what solutions? These are the 3 essential ones: talent, financing, and corporate culture values. What in order of priority? Talent, probably the most important. If there's talent, normally financing or funding comes afterwards. And even though there is a crisis, we've opened up in another country, 2 countries, and we've achieved the financing to do this. Corporate culture values. The companies that are able to transfer their values, their corporate culture, are the ones that are going to be more sustainable. The ones with the most talent are going to be able to carry out this process. Those companies that launch franchises and each person sets up their own business or companies in line with what the regional director says, I believe are condemned to disappear. So what do we seek in a person for globalization process of the company? And I've separated into two sides. On the one hand, without using scientific terms, with the skills, the competencies of a person, and the other has to do more with the spirit of the person, with the interior. So what do we seek? What are we looking for in these peoples? Heterogeneous leaders, people who are able to motivate, to be able to get people to be enthusiastic with what they are doing. Engineers, lawyers, you maybe can be a good leader in your group of researchers because you know a lot of things, but we need people too who can combine these profiles and get everybody to work for a common good. Coaches are necessary too. Often when you launch something new, you always go and look for the person who knows things best. We don't need Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi. We need Simeone, because what we have to do is construct a company. What you're going to do is you have to go, I'm going to go there, I'm going to construct, I'm going to build up a team. So what we need for that is a coach, and not the players. Languages. Languages are absolutely essential. I would never send anybody to set up a partnership outside Spain with they don't know languages. You can't do anything if you don't know English. Often in Latin America, we don't, of course, have problems of languages except Brazil. For the person who you send Brazil, are you going to learn Brazilian Portuguese? That is, are you going to learn the language? No, no. It's sufficient with Spanish. But that is the wrong way of looking at things. That person must say, well, yes, I'm going to Brazil, I'm going to learn Brazilian Portuguese. We must be able to survive in changing environments. They change the place where they live. They must not get stressed. They must be able to sort out the problems equally. And they must be digital. They must be active in a digital world. And they must know how to manage, how to administer people. That is what we must do today. And there must be some specific peculiarities, because if you know how others think, how they're going to react, etc. This is with respect to skills, competences, etc. On the spiritual side, the people who move around the world must be willing to live in the country, to experience the country. It's not a question of going there 4 days a month and coming back home again and that sort of thing. What you must do is be interested in living there. They must want to live in the country, not just traveling backwards and forwards. If a person doesn't believe in the values of the company and they don't believe that these values make the company different, this person must not be sent to do certain things. They're probably good at projects and that sort of thing, but they're not going to be good at globalizing the company. They must be pioneers, entrepreneurs. They know that they're going to create something, and they must be willing to run risks. We know what we are looking for, and we also know what these people demand. If we go and we tell a person, I want you to do this, that, and the other, well, that person has some demands as well that we must satisfy for things to be successful. the first thing they must want to do is help the cooperation. They must realize that what they are going to do is important and that they're going to help the cooperation. These people are very good, but they're expensive, and so they must be paid accordingly. In the case of Google that Professor Echenique has mentioned, they're the best people, and so they must be paid. They must be acknowledged for what they're doing. People are normally sent to specific countries. It's not the same as going to Angola as the US. And maybe the companies are equally interesting. You must be able to know how to make Angola attractive with respect to the US. Guarantees on the return as well. You can't send people abroad. The people who, if they're going abroad, they must be guaranteed having a post when they come back, having a job when they come back. They're used in different positions, because often when these people come back, they don't have a job to do, and that is a problem, and that must be all done transparently. Another, the essential aspects as well, is solutions to the family mobility. Normally, they don't want to worry about schools or health or that sort of thing. And these are things that the company has to be aware of and must know how to solve, so that people going there don't have to worry about these sort of things. What do they? This is what I've just mentioned is what they demand based on their heads or brains. And based on spirit, well, they want autonomy. They want to be able to take decisions on their own. If we're going to send somebody outside, send them abroad, and they have to depend on us to make decisions, well, it is better not to send them. And once they've made the decisions, taken the decision, they must be acknowledged. And they must realize that they are going to be able to be promoted much more quickly than if they had stayed at home. I'm going to finish very quickly with something that I could call good practices. If a company is considering this type of process, globalization process, or expanding, the first thing is to plan everything well, to plan the generation of talent, of global talent. For example, in recruitment, it's not just you have to integrate in this global world. And languages, once again, is very important. We have to recruit people who are willing to move around, or if they prefer to have a more stable job with a specific hours, that has to be taken into account. People must know that they're going to have to run risks, and all this sort of thing must be planned. Training as well, training in competences, in skills is very important. You have to learn to swim by swimming, of course, as Dr. Echenique has mentioned before. We have to interact in this type of environment. Measurement. When we send people, we don't really know if they're successful, so we have to measure that success. We have to measure the results to see if they're successful. And with respect to development, we have to have acknowledgement processes. They must be clear how their career is going to develop. And we mustn't forget the administrative complexity of all this sort of thing, the immigration, taxes, all count. If not, it could give rise to problems. We must develop talent from the beginning. If you're sending a director to do a mission and they're going to have to train in this, it is expensive. We must do it when people are younger. It's much less expensive because they are more willing to take these steps. if they have no families behind them, that sort of thing. So if we start when the people are very young, it is much more economical than when a person is older and has a family, that sort of thing. There are times when we can't train people gradually in this sort of skills. So often in that case, we don't have an important integration process. If we have to teach them about the corporate processes for the people to understand about the project, about the company and the project that they're going to undertake in the foreign country. If we're going to develop a company, we have to look for the best representative in the company. And this often doesn't work. So it is better for a person to be familiar with the culture of the company. And this person will probably end up remaining in the company. We have to bear in mind the acknowledgement, as I've said before, but we must not overvalue people. Because in that case, if we think a person can do a lot, we send them to do too much, and then that person will have problems. And so this is something we also take into account. Succession plans and time intervals. We've often found that people have a period of time of 2 to 4 years when they have to stay there. If, apart from that, this person takes their own team with them, that is also a mistake. For example, I'm going to set up an office in the US, and I'm going to take my own team with me. And at the end of that 2-4-year period that I've mentioned before, the whole team is going to come back, and they haven't taken into account who is going to take over from them. So it is better to build up the team locally, so that when the person comes back to the company, there are people left there who know how to do things. If we are, the ideal thing in globalization would be instead of having 2-4 years, to stay a bit longer so that the local people can learn more and better. And when the person from the company comes back home, those local people know how to manage the company correctly.